ideally, the people forming relationships and building ideas and having creative partnerships facilitated by ConnectHV should be so much bigger and more all-encompassing than ConnectHV is. ConnectHV should just be like the springboard that this stuff is starting from. Like, to me, the dream is like someday people will just accept it as a given that there's this thing called ConnectHV, and like no one will know where it came from. It's just like, oh yeah, like the Hudson Valley has this thing ConnectHV, and no one will be able to like remember how it started or where it came from. It just will be treated as accepted fact, like, oh yeah, that exists. I think that'd be so cool.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to No Set Path. I am your host, Drew English. So today, I'm talking with Jordan Koschei about what happens when you don't fit into a neat professional box. Jordan comes from the tech world as a developer and product person, but he's also building something really special for creatives right here in the Hudson Valley. We talk about his project ConnectHV, a community platform bringing together local artists, entrepreneurs, and makers. But what I really love about this conversation is how we get into the playful nature of creative work, how building a business or a community is really just a more sophisticated version of stacking blocks as a kid, and why that sense of exploration and wonder is what keeps us all going. If you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to check out the No Set Path newsletter on Substack at thedrewenglish.substack.com. And with that, let's jump right in.
What is your like default coffee that you drink?
I'm a very simple man. I'm a black coffee. Although I used to be an AeroPress guy, which I still am, but I got lazy. So now I found a Braun, like just a Braun coffee maker from the 90s. So I went Perfect. A little retro. It's great.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about it is that it's always the right temperature. Like, that's the thing. I was bad at getting the AeroPress to the right temperature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Braun is always the right temperature.
What is, like, do you have a preferred, like, bean or
no?
I'm kind of coffee.
I'm kind of an equal opportunity coffee drinker. I like darker and maybe oilier is kind of my move. That's kind of what I like more. But how about you?
So I also go with just the black coffee.
Yeah.
I was trying to go just decaf, and then I had kids, and now I'm like 2 to 3 cups of the high strength stuff every day. I tried for a while. I was just getting like just a variety of local coffee shop beans.
Yeah.
But what I've settled on is Tracks in Beacon.
Oh, cool.
Their No Sleep Till Beacon has become my like default.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. We have Monkey Joe here. They're pretty good. Well, thanks for doing this, man. You kind of exist outside the world of like the guests I've traditionally had on the show, right? But you're doing really interesting things locally. You're acting as a really huge connector of people. And you also ride this line of being in the tech world, but also being a creative, and you're into like photography and you shoot a lot of stuff on your drone, and like you ride a very interesting line. So I thought it would be great to have you in and chat with you about what makes you tick and like what you're interested in, and, you know, learn a little bit more about what you're doing locally here with ConnectHV and things like that. So
sounds great.
Yeah. Thanks again for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You bring up a good question, which is I don't know how to describe what I do, what I am. And I've like sort of always had that issue where like, I guess professionally I'm a designer, but I don't actually just design. I spend most of my time in code, but I'm not a software engineer because I also do design work. And yeah, I've just never really had a name for what I do. And that strikes me as the most interesting professional challenge to have. Yeah. Like sort of in between everything.
That is something that I relate to a lot because I basically tell people all the time, well, I don't know what I actually do. Right.
Yeah.
There are things that I can do. There are things that I do to make a living, and they look like a few different things on any given day. But really at my core, I'm still on that like self-identifying quest of like, well, what is it that I do? Or am I ever going to figure it out? And am I just going to keep exploring and keep trying things on, which is really evident, you know, in what you're doing. So what's it been like for you as a Hudson Valley native, just keeping your roots here and growing like a career and a life and kind of diversifying what it is you do?
Do you want the long answer or the very long answer?
Let's go with long or, whatever. We have hard drive space. It's fine.
So I grew up in Wallkill, very southern tip of Ulster County. Basically, you could throw a rock and be in Orange County. And I grew up there, went to Wallkill Central School District, go Panthers, though I wasn't a sports guy, so it doesn't mean that much to me. I was the rare person who always knew that I wanted to stay. I feel like I knew so many people who were desperate to get out of the Hudson Valley. And I never quite got it because to me, it felt like the Hudson Valley was the nexus of the universe. And I think there's a version of that sounds very parochial, but to me, it just seemed like, all right, we've got like, this is the crucible of the American cultural scene. Woodstock happened here. The Culinary Institute of America, which even the French will sometimes acknowledge is one of the best cooking schools on the planet, is right here. A lot of the students stay and will do their Michelin star worthy craft from our local restaurants. The Hudson Valley, the Hudson River School of Art is here. It seems like there is so much going on here. And where else can you go hiking in the morning at a place like Minnewaska and still catch a show on Broadway in the evening? And so to me, this always seemed like a really worthy place to spend time. And I knew so many people who just wanted to get away because they thought the grass was greener. So the only time I ever really left was I went to college out by Pittsburgh, but I knew that I was going to come back. Like as soon as I saw how flat it was, as soon as you go a little bit west, I realized, no, definitely need to be in the Hudson Valley. And when I came back, I, at this point, knew that I wanted to be a professional software designer. And the common knowledge at that point was if you want to be in that field, you either live in San Francisco or you live in New York. And honestly, probably San Francisco. New York City was sort of like the second tier market for that. And so the decision that I found myself facing was I could have the career that I wanted, but not live in a place that I cared very much about. Or I could live in this place that I love, but maybe settle for a mediocre career doing brochure websites for businesses I didn't much have a connection to. And I decided, in the spirit of being like a work to live person, not a live to work person, all right, I'm going to do the Hudson Valley thing. I'm going to try and make a go of it as a creative person here. And at this point, keep in mind, I'm like 22, so still fairly ignorant and stupid. That's not to say that all 22-year-olds are, just I was at that age.
Most are. It's fine.
I didn't know what I was talking
too.
about.
I was too.
I figured, all right, maybe there are like a few dozen other people doing work that I find interesting and creatively satisfying in the area. And then someone cold DM'd me on Twitter, back when Twitter was a thing that you could use in good conscience, and was like, we're starting this thing called the Hudson Valley Tech Meetup. You should come. It's like some random night in Poughkeepsie. I hate networking events. They just seem really like cringy to me. I'm sure we'll get back to that because
we will.
That's why I'm here. But I figured, you know what? I have nothing else going on. I don't know that many other people who are still in the area. I'll go. And instead of the 12 people that I assumed, it was like 85 people there. And I started going every month. They would have a different event. And it was just full of these extraordinary people doing amazing work. And it wasn't cringy at all. It was really cool. And we had, at one point, our local congressman made an announcement at one of these events. We'd have like the CEO of meetup.com came up from the city because we were one of the larger meetup groups. And it really revealed to me how many people were in the same boat where they were either graduated from life in New York City and came to the Hudson Valley, or you'd stayed in the Hudson Valley and chose to invest your time and energy here. And it became possible. Remote work happened. There were enough people here that we've got this, like, we have the critical mass where you can make a creative life here. And this is no longer like a place in the middle of the woods. It's a place in the middle of the woods where you can also do whatever the heck you want.
Well, it's really interesting. I will often tell friends and family, or really anyone who will listen, if I'm in the right mood, I say that I have not had a great level of foresight most of my life. It's getting better the older I get.
Yeah.
But like in my 20s, zero foresight. Like I would probably be in a much different boat. Not that my boat is bad, but I would be probably somewhere else had my foresight been a little more dialed in. And to your credit, you loved the area and you wanted to invest in the place. And you said something that hits close to home, where it's like you wanted to prioritize your life first and, integrate your work off of that. And a lot of times, most of the time, like you said, many people move away, they chase their ambitions, they chase their dreams, and they wind up coming back or trying to escape the place that they've established themselves because it becomes a little bit too much. And you've done the opposite. You know, you loved the area, thankfully, that you grew up in, but you also wanted to invest in your life. I think somewhere in there is this little bit of foresight or faith in yourself or faith in your home that there was more. And I feel like now, in the last, let's call it post-COVID years, that's really started to show itself, and it's really started to pay off in a bigger way because myself, I'm an expat from the city. You know, it'll be 5 years this month that I've been up here. And I'm assuming pre-COVID, it was not the same situation.
It was different.
Yeah.
I still think that we haven't gotten to the place that we were pre-COVID in terms of community activity and some of the things that were going on.
Oh, interesting.
The Hudson Valley goes through these waves, and it seems to be on maybe a 15 or 20 year cycle where you have all this movement into the area, amazing stuff is happening, and then it's sort of like the tide goes out and then it comes back. Before COVID, I feel like we were in the middle of this really big community building moment where people were moving into the Hudson Valley. Then COVID happened, and I think even more people were moving to the Hudson Valley, but no one was going out.
Right.
No one was doing anything. And so I suspect, I don't have any data around this, I suspect we had a lot of people who moved in and then moved out before we could even, like, I hesitate to use the word capture because that sounds really like crass somehow, but like capture the value and bring them into the community. And I think there's a big difference between, like, there's a place where you sleep at night versus there's a place where you call home. And I think there were a lot of people who got out of the city and this was where they slept at night, but they never called it home. And so they left at some point. You were saying foresight. I tend to think of it as my particular brand of delusion that, like, oh, I think it would be cool if there was more community here. I'm going to, like, help start this community thing along with all the other people who are, like, that is a special kind of, like, why would you do this? Especially when you have first just had 2 kids. Like, that's a terrible idea. But it seems to be that my personal brand of delusion came about at the exact right time when people were also looking for this post-COVID, like, how do we find other creative people?
I would argue that a lot of people who do really great or important things or things of note, whether it's, you know, broad or, you know, contained in their community, start with some level of delusion, right?
Yeah.
And not in an unhealthy way, but just in a way that's like, oh, why doesn't this thing exist? It should. I want to do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's very evident in what is now ConnectHV that you've built from the ground up, where you said, I want to invest more in this community. There are more people here. They're not taking advantage of the community, the people, the area. I'm going to do something about it. So you started ConnectHV. Let's talk a little bit about that. When did you start it officially? And what is it for people listening who don't know?
When is actually a more complicated question
Right.
than it sounds like. So ConnectHV, the way it started is as an online directory where anyone with a Hudson Valley zip code, you can create a profile. You can say, like, hey, my name is Drew. I live in Kingston. I do the following things. Here are some samples of my work. And then anyone who is looking for, let's say, someone with experience in podcasting can type in, like, I'm looking for podcast experts in Kingston, or I'm looking for people who know their way around audio equipment in Ulster County. And they'll see you, and they'll also see the whole list of people who might have put themselves on this list. Right after college, I started working on a similar idea, the thought being that there should be some sort of, like, alumni network for small liberal arts colleges that's similar. I never really chased that idea. It was just kind of an idea that I still have on a hard drive. In around 2016, I started doing a similar thing for the Hudson Valley called Hudson Valley Talent Base. It never really got much traction. I think it had a couple of hundred people using it. I think I had found a solution that was orthogonal to the problem, not a proper solution. And I'd latched onto this idea that it should be about people showing their work. It should be less about the profiles and more about, like, hey, here's this sample of this piece of music I wrote or this art that I have painted or something like that. That falls apart pretty quickly for most creative disciplines. Because if you're a novelist, let's say, does that mean that you post once every 3 years?
Right.
That's not a very compelling project. There's no reason to keep coming back to it. So then I figured at some point, I launched this like a month before I got married. Also a bad idea. I have this habit of like, it's right around major life changes when suddenly I get that entrepreneurial itch and I do something that really should be like an 80-hour per week job.
I get it.
Don't follow my example there.
Yeah, in a less extreme way, I have a tendency to try and start big house projects right before holidays, which is a weird thing that I do. So I get it.
It's so relatable. Yeah. Like, oh, we have guests coming over. I'm gonna like replace our sink filter now.
Pretty much.
Or something.
Yeah. No, mine was the day before Thanksgiving, digging out a crawl space underneath our mudroom for some reason. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, talent base kept going for a little while, but I wasn't super invested. Again, big life change. I was like figuring out like what does like married life look like. And I decided, all right, I'll scale back. I'll start an interview publication where I interview people doing interesting work in the area, because I somehow thought that would be less work. Running an interview publication is so much more work than I thought it was. I don't know why I didn't expect that right off the bat, but like, of course it is. So I did that for a while, and then I'm like, no, it's just not as interesting to me. I like product work. I like building environments and seeing how people explore it and experiment with it. And so I kept coming back to the idea that like there should be a directory for the Hudson Valley. And so that's how I wound up taking the bones of Hudson Valley talent base, taking all of the lessons of that and rebuilding it into this thing, ConnectHV. It gained a little bit of traction. We had a few hundred people creating profiles, but then I had a very strange week. I guess this was last year, where 3 people in the span of 5 days approached me and said, why isn't there a Slack? Now, if you're not familiar with Slack, it's a chat platform. It's usually used by like teams at an office or teams of remote workers at a startup. It is not really equipped for this sort of thing, but it was the tool that everyone requested. So I said, sure, we'll create a Slack. I figured we'll get probably the same number as we have like users on ConnectHV. In the first week, we got 350 people. We're since well past 1,200. And then less than a month after that, venues started reaching out saying like, hey, we've got this co-working space in Poughkeepsie, or we've got this co-working space in Kingston. You've got people. We've got this space. Do you ever want to host like basically a meetup? So we started doing meetups, and it's kind of ballooned into a monthly thing. We try and do a different venue in a different town each month. We have our stalwarts. Like we do a lot of stuff at the Senate Garage or Co-work Kingston. But now that's become sort of the center of energy for this project.
Yeah. It's a lot, and it's grown really fast. So
yeah,
my experience with it, and I forget how I forget now how I initially found it. It was pre-Slack. It was when it was just the online directory. And it was right in that pocket of time where I was trying to just meet more people, put myself out there more. I was a little more green on the area. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to throw whatever I can at the wall and see what sticks. And so I created an online directory, or an online profile, excuse me, for the directory. And then not too long after that, the Slack channel started.
Yeah.
And I think I was like day one on the Slack channel, because I'm just like,
you were.
Sure. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And it is insane to me how quickly that has grown. But also, it's been an incredible, like, kind of proving ground to show just how many people are here across disciplines, right?
Yeah.
So you come from software and tech. I come from film and video, kind of 2 very disparate career paths. But what I found really interesting in just spending time in the community is that there's such a huge diverse cross-section of talented people from tech world all the way into like hard and fast creative disciplines. And it's so fascinating and interesting. And it's been wild to just kind of see how it's grown. Yeah. And whether you intended it to be or not, you personally have kind of turned into this like regional super connector of people.
Yeah.
Right. Even something came through on the Slack last night that I have to respond to, where somebody was looking for podcast work and you recommended me, which I appreciate. Yeah. But the point is you, and I know you well enough to know that I don't think you necessarily planned being like the hub of this, but you've kind of yourself turned into a super connector, in the sense that like you're plugging in people together. You're plugging people together and seeing what happens. And what's cool about it is your intention, I think, is very pure. It sounds, just from this initial part of the conversation, is like, oh, I just want to like build something and see how people play with it or engage with it. And you've been very community focused your whole life, it seems. So it's really just so fascinating to me. And that's why I think, whether you want to be or not, you are actually doing the creative entrepreneur work, pretty well.
Thank you.
And I also love the fact that like businesses and venues were reaching out to you, just like, it's one hand washes the other. They want awareness for what they're doing, and you can kind of show people what different possibilities exist. How do you feel about that when I say, oh, Jordan, you've turned into like the super connector in the Hudson Valley?
It's fun. It's a little intimidating in terms of before this got started, back when it was just a directory. I was at one of the Hudson mashups, and I had a little table where I was like advertising directory, like, hey, you can be the 80th person to join this thing. And someone came up to me and said, this is cool, but like, what guarantee is there that you won't like turn evil and be the next like Zuckerberg and steal all the data? And I thought that was such a good question.
It is a good question.
Because that's one of the risks, I think. And that's why I try and use the word homegrown everywhere, because it's important to me that people know that this isn't some platform from Silicon Valley that's been like white labeled and has the word Hudson Valley on it. I think there is a particular responsibility in making sure, like, no one can own the Hudson Valley community. You can only be a temporary steward of it. And that's why every time I speak at one of the meetups, I try and emphasize, like, the community was already here. Maybe it took a little bit of work to de-friction, like, people being able to find each other. But, like, the magic is the people who are already there. If I'm hit by a bus tomorrow, I hope I'm not. But if I'm hit by a bus tomorrow, I would hope that things would continue largely as they are. Because I think that, like, it's cool. I like there's like a part of me that's like, this is cool. I like being a super connector. And I like that I'm now able, like, I have this visibility through ConnectHV where I can see all of the different people who are signing up and what they do. And it's pretty easy to, if someone says, do you know someone who's good at podcasting? For me to just immediately think, wait, I know a bunch of people who are good at podcasting because I've seen them sign up. But that also feels like a lot of responsibility, because I guess this is the most lowercase L libertarian thing that you could say, but I sort of think that there should be the least amount of like oversight on high as possible, and community things should happen at the most grassroots level possible. And that includes if I'm the guy who set up ConnectHV, I would hope that I also am not like benevolent dictator for life.
Yeah. I think your head and your heart are in the right place where, and it's pretty clear knowing you for a little bit and hearing you talk about it now, that like what excites you about it is not the attention that you are getting personally.
Yeah.
It is the holy shit, this is something that's actually working. And it's growing. And I'll go out on a limb and say, maybe there's even this little bit of like wonderment on your side where you're like, oh, I planted a seed and it's growing. And that's the exciting part.
Well, I think that comes back to, we're talking about like the delusion it takes to be a creative entrepreneur. What's exciting to me is that we're getting closer and closer to the vision of the Hudson Valley that was always in my head, but maybe wasn't quite real, where everyone sort of knows everyone. And whether you're new here or you've been here for like 50 years, you can get plugged into a community. And the inclusive, welcoming environment that I've always wanted it to be in my head, it feels like it's being like uncovered a little bit so that even people who haven't been here for that long can see it. That's the part that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, it's been a great vehicle, just as somebody who's like gone through it in real time. It's been a great vehicle for somebody like me who's looking to just meet more people and just get out in the community more. And now I've been to enough of these things where I see the same people regularly. I meet new people regularly at the meetups. I brought my wife. She went to the first one the other week, and she's like, "You're about me." She's like, you clearly are respected in this community. I'm like, well, I've just sank the time in and like gone out and met more people. And it's true. Like it's really kind of this thing that's taken on a life of its own in a really great way. And I think on the ownership side of things, I think the unlock, as much as I will criticize Slack in terms of what it does to my stress level, I think having something that is more like a messaging platform in real time, where people can have like these real time interactions with other folks in the community, I think is the unlock that really helps it grow and helps it kind of grow beyond you being a bottleneck.
Yeah.
Right. For all the criticism I can give, just like living and dying on Slack, it has been really great to just have people ask questions, post events, communicate with each other in real time. I think it's something really special. And I hope it keeps growing. So ConnectHV is kind of like I'll call it your tech baby. I don't know if that's like really the right thing to say, but ConnectHV is kind of your baby. But you do a lot, like, just from the life standpoint, this is something that I think about a lot. I know people listening think about a lot. You have a full-time job.
Yeah.
You have 2 kids.
Yeah.
You have a wife and a house. You have ConnectHV that you're managing. How?
I don't know. If you figure it out, can you tell me? No, the real answer is, so I've always worked remotely, which affords a little bit of extra flexibility. I tend to work for very small startups where I know everyone who works there. And it's sort of just assumed that like 9 to 5 is not really the way that everyone operates. Maybe you work when you can work. My kids are 3 and 5, which is a lot more doable now than when they were like 1 and 3. I'm not getting up in the middle of the night to change diapers anymore, which is fantastic.
Pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know how it all happens. To me, like the order of priorities for me is like my family is way higher on the priority list than like ConnectHV and my day job.
Of course, sure.
So like that takes as much time as it needs. That's like, if ConnectHV stuff doesn't happen because I'm like hanging out with my kids, like great, that seems like a good use of time. And another part of it is I've tried to automate as much as possible with ConnectHV, so I just don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't touch the website for a few months, no one really notices because everything will just keep going on rails.
Yeah.
Just check in every week or so and just make sure nothing broke.
I know it seems maybe like a little bit of a vanilla question of like, well, how do you manage your life? Because everybody has a life to manage. But when I think about it, I think those are the really important things that nobody talks about, because people come on shows, podcasts, whatever, everybody's always trying to present their best curated self.
Yeah.
Right. And I think people are kind of, I don't know if they're unwilling to have the conversation, but I just don't think it comes up so much. It's like, well, how are you managing day-to-day life? Like how does that even work? Because even people who are doing quote unquote really big things still have a life and family and all that stuff to manage. So I think it's a question that's important.
Yeah.
And also I think it was the right question for you because it's clearly like the balance is a priority for you. And you've kind of like constructed your life around life, like we said, instead of work or career or ambition.
Yeah.
I
mean, the true, though not as pretty answer is like, I still struggle a lot with like finding the balance. And what that looks like is sometimes like if it's the day of a ConnectHV event and I'm going to spend like several hours doing that, maybe I'm going to work a little bit late too on the day job just to make sure everything is taken care of there. I still try and read every day, but I'm noticing my attention span slipping quite a bit. I think because I'm spending like 2 of my 3 biggest priorities involve staring at a glowing rectangle, I'm noticing in like the Marshall McLuhan sense, my brain more and more taking on the language of the glowing rectangle. And it's like harder and harder to think in a way that's like long form linear thought as opposed to the hypertextual, like jump from this to this to this to this. How does this relate to other stuff? Oh, here, I'm on a random tangent now. It's
100%. 100%. I respect you a lot for prioritizing life over work or ambition. And that's kind of in a very like circuitous way where I've wound up, where I was so tunnel vision on like being the best cinematographer I could be for so long, and like just climbing the ladder and like doing the whole film industry thing, until one day I was just like, wait, what? Like, what am I actually trying to do? And it, you know, there's a lot of life that's happened in a very condensed period of time for me that has like, you know, changed that literally since COVID. I think in this order was leave the city, get engaged, buy a house, get pregnant, get married. I think that was, have a kid.
Join ConnectHV.
Join ConnectHV right at the end.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's a lot of life that happens. And that was all over the course of what, like 2 years?
Yeah.
That makes you stop and go, what am I actually doing? Like, what am I actually trying for here? And I think that energy that you put out to the community, taking into consideration all the things we've talked about, I think is contagious in a lot of ways. I think people want that. They crave that. Like, people are always going to need community and some like real life interaction.
Yeah.
Because you're not, I mean, maybe you more so than others because of your line of work, but it's like our whole life is run on screens right now, whether you like it or not. And like, sure, you acquiesce a little bit to it. I think the people who like at the end of everything are going to wind up being happier and more fulfilled are the people who recognize that they need to play the game a little bit, but the game isn't their whole existence.
Yeah.
You know, the whole reason I started this podcast was because I wanted to talk to people and like have conversations. And then the whole reason I started my newsletter is because I wanted to like share thoughts or like experiences with other people. And then I always mess with myself and I go down this rabbit hole of like, oh, well, I should just start making, I don't know, like short form video or do more with YouTube and like all this stuff. And I could, but I have to really sit and think about like, well, what's the end game for me with that, you know? Because if I boil it down to brass tacks, it's like, I want a happy life and a stable income and to be making things creatively that satisfy me. And those are like the three buckets. Yeah. And so I have to kind of bump everything up against those.
That's the challenge of signing up for a creative life, I think, is that it's hard to make the quote unquote easiest way, not really easy, but I think the only way to get all three of those things is if you can get two of them to overlap.
Yeah.
But getting your creative satisfaction and your income to be the same thing.
Yeah.
I still don't know anyone who's been able to do that.
It's tricky because you're always trying to get those lines on the graph to intersect, right? But it's kind of like approaching the speed of light in like the theory of relativity. It's like you can get ever closer, but you'll never cross it. You know, it's like you'll infinitely be trying to approach that limit, but you'll never get there. You'll never get them to intersect. It's always something you see on social media. So it's like, I take that with a grain of salt. But every time I hear somebody say like, my life is great, like I'm doing the thing I love for work, I'm like, are you really? Like, I want to I want to tear that down a little bit. Yeah. I want to tear that down a little bit and like look behind the curtain. How do you consider yourself creative? And specifically for you, because you're someone who's coming in here and sitting in this chair, works on the tech side and also runs an online community. And yes, I can like make some correlations between like creativity and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I want to hear from you. How do you consider yourself a creative? Or, you know, because you've mentioned that a bunch. And in our conversations outside of this, like you are a creative guy, you know, you like to do a bunch of like drone footage around the Hudson Valley, which is cool, as one outlet for creativity. But like, how do you consider yourself creative?
I have a very broad definition. A very broad definition of creativity.
Yeah, I would love to hear.
I think that there are the disciplines where it's obvious that it's creative, like photography, painting, being a musician, like obviously creative. I think that any sort of generative work is creative. Anything where you're putting some like raw inputs together and creating something new is creative. I think that it's definitely possible to be like an attorney who's creative or a realtor who's creative. Last time I did any sort of interview, I said accounting can be creative, and then I immediately regretted it because I feel like that has totally different implications. But yes, you can be creative and also be a professional accountant.
Yeah, creative accounting implies different things.
For me personally, it's a tricky question because it's one of those things where like I think we all know a little bit what creative means, but then you ask someone to define it and they're like, I don't know. It is. For me, I think making things real that were previously in my imagination, I think is creative. And that's like what I do in the tech world. It's pretty much that's like taking something that's purely mental and turning it into a concrete thing that lives in like pixels and code. I think it's a pretty pure distillation of creativity. But then also something like, I really wish there were more opportunities for individuals to socialize in the Hudson Valley. And then being able to piece together like, oh, we've got these people, we've got these venues, we've got businesses that are willing to like kick in some money so that we can buy pizza and it's free for everyone who attends. That is also, I think, a creative act. And I think there's also a bit of a meta level to it because the ideal end game for my branch of creativity is it's enabling other people to be creative. Do you know the difference between a software product and a software platform? This is something I learned recently.
I could take a guess, but why don't you explain it to me?
So I'll use actually the Bill Gates definition.
Great.
This was probably 20 years ago. He was explaining how he viewed Windows, the operating system, as a platform, not a product. And it's that the gross domestic product of companies building stuff and people building stuff on Windows should make so much more money than Microsoft makes from selling Windows. That's sort of how I view ConnectHV, is like ideally the people forming relationships and building ideas and having creative partnerships facilitated by ConnectHV should be so much bigger and more all-encompassing than ConnectHV is. ConnectHV should just be like the springboard that this stuff is starting from. Like, to me, the dream is like someday people will just accept it as a given that there's this thing called ConnectHV and like no one will know where it came from. It's just like, oh yeah, like the Hudson Valley has this thing ConnectHV and no one will be able to like remember how it started or where it came from. It just will be treated as accepted fact, like, oh yeah, that exists. I think that'd be so cool.
That's a really cool way to wrap up that thought. And yeah, I think creating something out of nothing, no matter what your focus or discipline is, yeah, I think that's very purely creative. Like, no way right now I could build something like what you're working on without some serious AI help. And it wouldn't even get close. But I think there's something also to be said about doing something just for the joy of doing something, or for the like, can I do this kind of question? Because, this studio, like all this stuff, like I started a podcast in COVID because I was bored and I needed something to do. And it's something that always interested me. So I dug into it, and it's like grown from there. And then I have the studio, and I just thought it was interesting. And this is just something I do because I want to talk to people I want to talk to. But things have happened because of it. I have a business with a podcast studio because of my show. I've done consulting for other people where I've built studios for other people as a part of my business. Not intentionally. It all came to me because I just made a thing and put it out there. And it's one of the few times where I didn't attach some outcome to it. I was just like, here you go. I'm going to put this out there, see what happens. It's something I want to do. I'm really bad, or very guilty rather, of consistently attaching outcomes to things. And I think that trips me up sometimes. There's some pragmatic times in life where you should attach an outcome to something. It's like, if my outcome is I don't make any money this month, then the accompanying outcome is I can't pay my mortgage. So it's like, so there's that. The older I get and the longer I'm in like a creative profession, I'm just like, you have to learn how to let go sometimes.
Yeah.
It's,
I watch my kids play and they have no outcome associated with any of it. And there's a phrase I heard a few years ago that it just really brings it home, which is that a creative adult is a child who survived.
100%.
And I just love the idea that like creativity is just, it's play.
Yeah. That's actually a great quote. Wait, what is it?
A creative adult is just a child who survived.
Amazing.
I have no idea who said it, but it's like the best quote ever.
It's great.
Yeah.
But I mean, that totally goes hand in hand. Having kids, man, it's been so equalizing on so many ways, because not only do you see yourself in them and like all the things that like, you know, you hear people out in the world say, it's like, oh, you'll see yourself in your kids and personality and all this stuff. But when you just see how unfiltered they are with everything, it's really amazing. Not just from like a parental, like emotional level, but also just from like a human level. And I've said this for years. It's like, you know, we'll be walking down the street and hear like a kid throwing a tantrum or something like that or whatever. And I'll say frequently, it's like, well, I still feel that level of emotion with lots of things. I just have 40 years of filters built up over it. And so I think at a visceral level, we are all still have that child mind somewhere.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, we just want to play and we just want to like have fun and do things that entertain us, and you know, making a community for creatives or starting a podcast or whatever we're doing is effectively just a fancier version of like stacking blocks into a tower and like, look, it didn't fall over. Amazing. Let's do it again. You know?
When I was a kid, I was an only child. I was bored a lot, and my big hobby was I really liked The Legend of Zelda, and I wanted to make stuff like Legend of Zelda. I realized in hindsight, it wasn't that it's like it's a fun game to play. I did find it fun, but it's the idea of like you create this little world and people can step into the world and experience it. And I realized recently that is, at the end of the day, that's just what ConnectHV is. I'm building a directory now instead of like a little 8-bit fantasy world.
Yeah, man. But that's it. But that's
the same thing.
World building, storytelling, all that stuff that like that's at the core of the human experience.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why I like, oh man, I need to plug in my PlayStation. It's just been sitting in a box forever. But it's like the video games that I always enjoyed. I was never like the RPG guy, whatever. I always enjoyed being able to play a character that moved through a world, right? And it's like, yeah, there's action stuff. It's like, I think of a game like The Last of Us or Ocarina of Time, to throw it back to like N64 days. It's like, there's always stuff you need to accomplish. There's action to play through. Like there's all that stuff. And I equate that to like, well, in real life, that's just the things you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, but the reason I got so immersed in those games has nothing to do with the gameplay. At the end of the day, it has to do with, well, what's the story that we're building? What's the world that we're building? And like, that's what really sucks me in, right? You want to get to the next step to find out what's the next chapter of the story. Like that's what pushes you through a video game. And it's like, I kind of view life that way.
Yeah.
Although life is a lot more frustrating in so many ways.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that's what like keeps me going.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, what does the next chapter look like? I absolutely have no idea.
Yeah.
But also I've made it this far. So, you know.
The magic, so Ocarina of Time was also like, that was
so good.
My game. But the real magic there, I always thought this was before you could just look up stuff on the internet, and I didn't have any of the strategy guides.
Oh, I 100% had the Nintendo Power Guide for Ocarina of Time.
I never had that.
Oh,
and so to me, the real magic of that game was you'd press start, you go to the inventory screen, and you would see all these slots that are not filled up yet. And I would just wonder, what goes there?
Yes.
Like, what did they come up with that goes there?
Exactly.
And that, what you just said gives me the same feeling as being like 8 years old or whatever, and like opening up that inventory screen, being like, I wonder what goes there.
I think that's it. You know, I think that's really at the crux of everything, that we as adults with, you know, families and children and responsibilities and all that stuff kind of lose sight of. Not because we want to, but just because, you know, you only have so much energy and so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
But it's like, I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I'm turning 44 this month, right? In no way do I feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some physical stuff that I feel, but like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like all that stuff, I'm like, I still feel like a teenager, you know? Yeah. Like I still, when my daughter goes to bed, I'm like, I'm too tired to do it right now, but I want to hook up the PlayStation.
Yeah.
and I want to just like zone out and give myself permission to like get lost in a world. And it's like, and you know, I still feel like a kid in a lot of ways, and I don't think I'm ever going to lose that. And I think that's what's kept me on this creative track and always trying to figure something new out and like kind of tweak the system or tweak the gameplay a little bit, you know, just to make it work that much better or give me a little bit more of an advantage. I mean, I think it's a really good analogy, like the gamification analogy, because it's like, yeah, that's what it all comes down to for me. It's like, I don't want to be bored. Like, you know, I've been there. I've been in like the mundane routine, and I'm glad I'm out of it, you know?
Yeah. Life is too short.
Well, so what's next for you? What's next for ConnectHV? What's on the horizon?
Got a bunch of things queued up for ConnectHV. One of the big initiatives right now is I hear from a lot of people that they don't use Slack because they don't want to use Slack.
You haven't heard from me, but I wouldn't be sad to not use Slack.
So I'm looking at essentially building a ConnectHV native, like a homegrown Slack replacement that has just what we need and nothing more. I've been, if you're from Salesforce / the Slack team, don't listen. A while back, I built out a system that would grab all of our content from the API. So whenever someone posts, it's not visible or like it doesn't exist anywhere except in the database for ConnectHV. We have all of the messages stored. So if we ever want to migrate, we're not confined to like the 3-month look back that Slack actually allows for on the free plan.
Smart.
Slack is crazy expensive. If you don't have the free plan, for our size, it would be between, I think, around $9,000 a month.
Unbelievable.
It's unreal.
Unbelievable.
So without paying that, where you can only see the last like 90 days of messages.
Yeah.
So I just have everything before that is stored someplace so that if we ever wanted to like run some statistical analysis or have our own homegrown system, we'd be able to do that. And I have all like the permission structure rigged up so that like it would ping everyone and say like, are you comfortable with your messages being visible? No.
Super smart.
We'll remove that from the database.
Super smart.
That's one thing. Another thing I'm looking at is this is late breaking. I'm starting a merch store because I really want more Hudson Valley like t-shirts and hats and stuff.
Right on.
And I've just been tinkering on like t-shirt designs for a while. And I decided I'm going to start publishing them someplace.
I love that.
So
that's awesome.
Look out for that. I'll find like some way to do like a coupon code or something where like maybe for the first month everyone can buy it at cost. So that's like it's widely distributed. And then after that, it'll go towards like the server costs and maintaining ConnectHV.
Yeah. Look at you, man. You're always working on something.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good trait because I flit from idea to idea.
Yeah.
But
I understand
last night I did spend like 3 full episodes of The Gilded Age doing monoline vector renditions of different bridges in the Hudson Valley.
Okay.
So,
well, you know,
gonna be a shirt.
To each their own. And I think to kind of finish up, where can people learn more about ConnectHV or you personally, if you want to share that, whatever you want?
Go to connecthv.com. There's an about page there. If you're curious more about like the underpinnings of the project or the philosophy behind it, all that's on the about page. But then you can also sign up there. You can join the Slack through there. You can find out about the upcoming events through there.
Amazing.
Also, you can find out about me through there. If you like, you'll find my profile on it. And I'm sort of trying to concentrate all my energy there. So that's also how you can find out about me.
That's great. Jordan, thanks so much for being on, man. This was great.
Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate it.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my conversation with Jordan Koschei. You can find everything about ConnectHV at connecthv.com. That's where you can join the community, check out upcoming events, and connect with other creatives here in the Hudson Valley. It's also a great model for community building if you're interested in doing something similar in your own area. Thanks for listening to No Set Path. If this conversation resonated with you, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube as well. And don't forget to check out my newsletter on Substack at thedrewenglish.substack.com, where I write about building something meaningful on your own terms. We'll see you next time.